business-to-business marketing lessons from the book Innovative B2B Marketing, New Models, Processes, and Theory. This was written by the former CMO for Dell in the UK. He also worked for Acer, Microsoft, and Toshiba. Business-to-business marketing is about building long-term relationships. I think a lot of business-to-business marketers miss this point because there's so much emphasis on short-term demand generation, short-term lead generation, meeting quota this month, this quarter. But when you're getting into the highest levels of business-to-business, especially in enterprise, you're looking at a very long period. Long buying process that can last up to multiple years. In business to business, the return on profit or revenue terms can be quite a far away in time from the timing of the adverts due to the length of the buyer journey. So if maybe you're working with a client or you're working for your boss and they're wondering where's the ROI on this business to business marketing campaign, well, I would pull some quotes from this book or from my presentation coming from the book and say, hey, listen, if we want to get these big contracts, it's going to take a long time. We can't expect ROI within a month or even in a quarter. And you're also dealing with a lot of people. So on average, there are 6 stakeholders and 3 departments that you need to influence to get that sale. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are basically 2 types of business-to-business marketing. The first is transactional. So this is going after people that have like small home offices, also going after small businesses. In this case, what you're doing is it's mostly digital marketing in this case. You're going after a large target. You're only going after one decision maker, and it's a short sales process. So it looks a lot more like business to consumer. But the second type of business to business marketing, which is often what people are really talking about when they talk about B2B, is relationship. This is when you're going after scaling businesses, medium businesses, and large businesses. Now, in cases like this, often what you're doing is you're marketing to the C-suite, especially if you have things like thought leadership. So let's get some advice for that. 90% of the C-suite ignores cold outreach. Now, I just want to qualify that by saying there are ways of getting past that. So, for example, sending a large physical box in the mail will probably get the attention of the C-suite if it looks handwritten, if it looks special, looks like a gift. It might get past the gatekeepers. But in general, most cold outreach will get ignored. So one way around that the book suggests is you engage the C-suite, the chief executive officers, the chief financial officers, CIOs, etc., through third-party channels before you do a direct outreach. So one example I'm doing is I'm getting published in top publications like MSN, and another thing that you could do is you could advertise through channels that the C-suite trusts before you approach them directly. So that was build credibility, and people might actually pay attention to you. And the C-suite is more likely to trust people they perceive as peers rather than experts. So an example of how to apply this would be with LinkedIn advertising. Instead of advertising from your corporate account, you could advertise from somebody that looks like a peer. So if you're going after CIOs, then send your ads from the CIO of your company. Send your in-mails from the CIO of your company, and it's more likely to get noticed. You could also hire somebody who's a C-suite executive, maybe one of your customers, and use his persona in your advertising. So leverage C-level executives or influencers for content marketing and get them to send things like LinkedIn in-mail and also paid ads, paid in-mail messages through the advertising platform on LinkedIn. You can also do video and podcast interviews with the C-suite. You could have a C-suite panel or webinar. You could advertise on CIO.com. You could target associations that the C-suite executives are members of. So, for example, SEMA. You could create an event for the C-suite. You could build personal assistant peer-to-peer relationships. So, executive assistants from one executive could meet with the executive assistants of other executives, and they could share information. You could look for inspiration from companies that market a lot to the C-suite. So, IBM, Oracle, World Economic Forum, etc. And you could also look at industry sector reports and create industry sector reports yourself, because often what the C-suite are looking for is high-level market thought leadership, looking at trends, things like that, rather than product-specific information, especially if you're going after, say, Fortune 500 companies. Now, we're going to look at 4 strategies for penetrating an existing market. Number 1, broadly target a specific geography. 2, target a specific segment. 3, use one channel. And 4, use multiple channels. So you can see you have a choice here. You don't have to go multi-channel if you don't want to. Get insights from account managers and customer advisory councils. So, for example, you might get input from a variety of customers who've signed up to provide you insights, and maybe in exchange, you're giving them valuable survey research. And account managers are pretty intimate with buyers, so they'll be a good source of insight as well. Now, the main types of buyer/roles that you're marketing to are the users, which is what you're seeing a lot of in the product-led growth space. The influencers, so these could be the experts, maybe they're consultants, maybe they're web designers, things like that. There's the actual buyers, so these are the purchasing people in the purchasing department often. Then there's the decider, the end decider, that's the CEO or the head of a department, and often it's the head of the finance department, or a senior person in the finance department. And then there's the gatekeepers. So, for example, executive assistants. So you need to cater your marketing to these different roles. Now, there are certain buying triggers that happen that sort of instigate the buying purchasing process. So, for example, Microsoft ending support for XP is a trigger for a lot of change and the need to buy perhaps added services. The end of a warranty would be another trigger. Could be new growth in the company. So maybe they're setting up a new office or something like that. Or maybe there's a new technology that's emerged. So we're seeing a lot of generative AI producing a need as a buying trigger for businesses. 90% of business-to-business buyers twist and turn through the sales funnel, so it's not a linear process, and you can't expect to kind of force people through a linear funnel. Sometimes what you have to do in B2B, in my opinion, is you just need to throw a whole bunch of different content out there that caters to different stages of the funnel, not knowing necessarily what stage a given target person is at. On average, you're looking at 13 pieces of content being consumed before a purchase decision is made. You can offer low-cost or free services to demonstrate your capabilities as a way to get your foot in the door and get your product considered. You could offer an article or thought leadership piece that, as a follow-up, could link to a webinar or a call to discuss the challenge. So that's kind of like a simple two-step marketing funnel is thought leadership piece followed up with a webinar to get into more detail. Something that you're going to have to play with as you do business-to-business marketing is adjusting the frequency. So monitor the frequency of your ads, which you can do in things like Facebook, LinkedIn, pretty much any advertising. You can also do it in email programs. So email in particular, you're going to have to decide, are you going to send out an outreach once a month, once a quarter? Are you going to have your account representative contacting them every month or every week, perhaps, in later stages of the buying journey? You can predict the likelihood of someone leaving. So you could do this with some sort of scoring basis. So maybe they haven't logged into your software in a while. So that would be an indicator. Or in excellent cases, you can just use AI to predict who has the highest probability of leaving. It's going to be more difficult to do that with enterprise B2B because you may only have a few major customers that really matter. And it's hard to get a lot of AI data when you only have a few big customers. Okay, so examples of thought leadership, which are particularly important at the top of funnel in B2B, would be reports, blogs, podcasts, videos, guides, and presentations. Also have to keep in mind in B2B that it's not as simple as just marketing a single product. Often what you're doing is you're marketing multiple products, a portfolio of products, and then that's packaged with other things like warranties, packaging, customer service, customer success, etc. So when you're thinking about your value proposition, you have to think of it in broader terms than just this one product, how it's different or how it's the same, how it creates value. Use needs-focused messaging. So an example that I would say here is you could have like a carousel ad on LinkedIn, and maybe each card within the carousel ad caters to different needs or different things that the prospect may want to accomplish. You want to use social listening. So social listening tools would include Hootsuite, TweetReach, Buffer, etc. You can use these to discover pain points, to see how you're positioned relative to the competition. You can use it to identify influencers. You can also use it to identify topics and content that you should be using in your content marketing. You can also use text messaging, given that open rates on emails have been declining and it's more saturated now. You could set up a workshop or seminar to discuss specific needs. So maybe there's an emerging need with AI, for example. Approximately 50% of business-to-business search queries are from mobile. So make sure that the content that you're creating, the presentations, the websites, etc., are catering to people that are using mobile devices, and don't assume that the creative you're making is going to be seen on desktop. 2/3 of business-to-business teams create content for the top of funnel, despite the fact that there's a strong need for nurturing. Again, if somebody's not going to buy a year or more into the future, then it's really important that you do nurturing. Nurturing is actually where the secret sauce is. You can use multiple channels, so LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, etc. There's this perception sometimes, oh, business to business buyers, they're not on Instagram, they're not on Twitter, they're not on Facebook, but the same people that are on LinkedIn are also on these other platforms. So there's no reason that you can't use that for business to business, as long as you can get the targeting right. And from my experience, you can get the targeting right by simply importing a list of who your target is, and then your match rate's not going to be perfect. It's probably going to be less than 50%, but you can still target those buying decision makers. On LinkedIn, share content and insights that are relevant to them, especially if there's a particular trend or regulation that's affecting their industry. You can use native advertising. This is advertising that looks similar to other content on the site, so it looks like it belongs on CNN or Fox News or whatever, but it's actually an advertisement. Now, looking at the digital marketing value chain. So we have the backend infrastructure. So this is stuff we own, like our website or social profiles, like our LinkedIn page, Facebook page, other sorts of owned content and owned resources. All right. Next, we have digital preparation. So this is co-creation. So we can create content with our partners, with influencers, with some of our customers. We have search engine optimization. We have various content formats. Digital activation. These are programmatic ads. Content licensing or retargeting ads, which can be run through Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, etc. We have paid social and paid search like Google and Bing. And then lastly, we have digital performance tracking. So looking at things like UTM trackers, which is special tags you add onto URLs to track performance. You have tracking through your CRM like Salesforce to see what advertising, what promotions, what emails, etc. are performing well. Strategy really is considering a mix of owned, paid, and earned. So we have owned channels, we have paid channels, and then we have earned media from PR, for example, like getting into TechCrunch. And I also want to say that these can work well together. So for example, if you get published in entrepreneur.com, well, why not advertise that article? You're not advertising your own website, but people are maybe more likely to believe what Entrepreneur is saying about your product than what you directly are saying about your product in an ad. Okay, we have different attribution models, and this has been very deceptive for a lot of people where they're relying too much on last touch attribution. So you have affiliates that kind of steal the credit for the sale, even though they maybe didn't play that big a role. So you should consider different options here. So there's last touch, where all the credit goes to the last touch point that you've had with the prospect. There's the first touch, the first time the customer found out about you. There's non-weighted, where you give equal value to each touch point in the customer journey. There's time-based, where more value is attributed to a recent interaction with that customer. There's measurement-based, where value is given to the most measurable touch point. And then there's position-based, where the bulk of the value, the attribution is given to the first and last touches, and the middle ones are given less value. Your website should cater to different stages in the buying journey. My general rule of thumb is that websites are middle of funnel, so it's about providing things like product details, whereas actually getting the sale is going to happen through something like email and phone, and getting awareness is going to happen more through things like awareness, advertising, and PR. But websites can cater to various stages and various stages within the middle of the funnel. Now, when people are doing searches, they may be general in the beginning when they're doing early research. So when they're searching on Google or Bing, and that means you need to create content that caters to those different types of search queries. And then later, they're going to get more specific. So they're going to start researching specific problems and specific products, things like your competitors, and you want to make sure that you're showing up there. Make sure that you cater to the different needs of the people doing the searches and the research too. So like a non-technical buyer wants to know the business impact, doesn't really want to know the details about the product itself, doesn't even want to try the product. Now, where we're getting into the specifics of SEO, what we want to do is group keywords into clusters and by stages in the journey. So for example, blog posts may be for early stages of the buyer journey. And then we have more technical or more specific product landing pages for the middle and late stages of the buyer journey. We want to remove duplicate content. We want to target based on language, and we want to have quality URL formats, which in general means pretty simple. So like a slash keyword and then a hyphen for the second part of the key phrase. Email marketing. You want to focus on thought leadership and education for the middle of the buyer journey. You want to have product/solution or promotion emails for the purchase stage, so later in the buyer journey. And the other thing to keep in mind is that email marketing is only annoying if it's overused or untimely. If you receive an email for something that's very relevant that helps you solve a problem or something that's top of mind for you right now, it's not a nuisance. It's not spam. So really, it's about thinking about what do they want to hear about? Is this valuable to them at this point? So here are some different email types by buyer stage. In the early buyer stage, when they're unaware and they're trying to define their needs, this is when you're giving educational thought leadership and rich content. In the mid buyer stage, when they're evaluating their options, you're providing nurture information, solution information, case studies, and storytelling. In the late buyer stage, where they're comparing options and trying to make a purchase decision, you're promoting the product specifically, you're being more promotional, and you might do things like embedding a demo of your product in emails and videos, etc. And then in the last stage here, retention, repeat purchase, you're looking at things like product development newsletters and next best purchase decisions. Now, as you start to develop your content, which is one of the most critical aspects of business-to-business marketing, you want to map it to different stages and making sure that you're filling each of those stages, because the buying journey is quite lengthy and it involves a lot of different aspects that are not just, oh, I know about the brand, but it's also, I know details about the product. I know details about the product category. I know details about whether this is compatible with our existing infrastructure. And I need to know about other product offerings so that I can buy more. So top of funnel here, we have awareness. And this is really about education. It's using things like SEO, search engine optimization, SEO, videos, infographics, research reports, industry articles. In the evaluate stage, really, this is about research. So webinars, case studies, testimonials, content syndication. So for content syndication, for example, you might use TechTarget for IT decision makers. In the compare stage, we're doing comparisons. Comparisons with webinars, case studies, testimonials, content syndication again, comparison tools, comparison tables, I would say as well, maybe saying, here are the features we have, here are the features the competitors don't, slide shares. In the buy and post-purchase stage at the bottom of the funnel, we're looking at usage and optimization, user forum content, tutorials, forums, blogs, etc. The other thing we want to do is we want to map the content to the different stakeholders or personas because they have different needs. Again, there are people who are non-technical that are really just interested in the business case. And then there's the technical people that want sometimes excruciating details about what it is that you're offering. So we have the C-suite as basically a persona cluster. We have managers, we have purchasing, we have IT and finance. So an example might be how to deploy storage infrastructure. Okay, so we have to think about, well, this is a key theme, but who actually cares about that? Well, it might be the IT department. How to reduce costs? Well, the finance department's going to be interested in that, but maybe the C-suite will also be interested in that. So as we're marketing this, as for example, we're advertising it on LinkedIn, let's think about who we're targeting as we deliver these key messages. We also want to think about the stages in the journey. So need recognition, consideration, evaluation, purchase, post-purchase. So an example of this is the C-suite may not really be interested at all in the purchase decision. They've perhaps only are interested in the need recognition, sort of understanding, do we even have a problem? Is this a problem worth pursuing? Is this trend something we need to be worried about? So thought leadership might be the only real thing that they're interested in, whereas the purchase is really, in some cases, only marketed to the middle management, or maybe the heads of different departments in some cases, depending on the size of the company. So you have to make that decision about how to map the content pieces. And then we get into the specifics of the tactical level of each of those content pieces. So infographics, webinar, slide shares, display ads, social ads, social posts, email, testimonial. And then I have highlighted here curated content and collaborations. So curated content, you don't necessarily need to create your own content. You could look at research that other people did and promote it from your branded account. So you're bringing to knowledge information that your prospective buyers, these personas, need to have, but you don't necessarily need to be the one doing the research. In fact, it might be more efficient just to broadcast research that other people did. And then collaborations. So you can collaborate maybe with other companies, with your competitors even, or influencers, and use those collaborations, those partnerships to get more traction out of your content. In the early stages of the buyer journey, you might use banners and videos as an example. And in the late stages, you'll do things like product-specific videos and case studies. So those details matter more later on. 2/3 of business-to-business buying decisions are evaluated before brands are contacted. So this is a fundamental change that's happened in business-to-business where buyers are spending a lot more time doing research on their own before they decide they want to talk to a salesperson or a consultant. So that means you need to invest a lot in things like search engine optimization or advertising, just getting in front of the buyer before you're able to have a direct conversation with them. Another trend that we're seeing is that long content is particularly effective now. So this means 3,000 plus words. So it could be things like surveys, a big event, other research, case study, lengthy case studies, etc. You want to think about what the core content is that you're delivering. So there might be various little tactical variations of content. So for example, short TikToks, but that there's the core content, which is going to be kind of the baseline of what you need. So this might be a big research report, a big story that the company wants to tell, a particular event like South by Southwest, a new message or theme, a specific customer story, or maybe a big market trend. So for example, you can make a piece of research that you did into an infographic, into a banner, into a presentation, repurpose it for various purposes. You also want to leverage influencers to create the content, broadcast the content, etc. I recommend using SparkToro to identify who the influencers are for your target buyer. Use emojis in your content. It's shown to be effective. Talk about a customer's achievements in your content. So that both is something the customer is going to want to broadcast and amplify for you, but it's also what people want to hear. They want to hear about their peers and how they solved a problem or accomplished something they too want to accomplish. And another thing in business to business is you can be creative. So for example, Hewlett-Packard hired Christian Slater to play a sinister hacker who attacks a corporate network. Well, that doesn't seem like your typical business to business ad, but it's the kind of thing that is attractive and may get attention and be remembered more than corporate speak. Now, there are various types of partners you're going to want to work with. So there are SEO partners, which are bloggers, publications, trade associations, business listing websites, etc. There are the trade associations themselves. There's event technology companies. There's influencers, there's bloggers, and there's telemarketing partners. Webinars are great lead magnets. One thing that you can do with the webinar is you invite speakers who have credibility on a topic, who your target customers may recognize, and then it's more likely that they will engage with the webinar. Now let's talk a little bit about business-to-business influencer marketing, which is a pretty hot topic right now. An example of this is Dell Luminaries, which is a set of podcasts that partners with various tech visionaries. There are analysts for a subject area or market. There are journalists who are also influencers. You have bloggers. You have specialists in each field who are seen as experts. And then we have the different tiers of business-to-business influencers. So there are macro, people that have 100,000 followers, mid-level, 25,000, micro, 10,000, and nano, 1,000 followers. And to identify and select influencers, again, I recommend SparkToro, but the author recommends social listening tools, looking at Twitter activity, industry associations, so for example, presidents and speakers, events and speakers, peers, and subject matter experts. Here's an example of how you can evaluate influencers. So here are the different influencer types: journalists, analysts, peer, and subject matter expert. And then we can look at things like, what is their reach? What are their number of posts? What's their activities, their number of followers, their customer mentions, and qualitative aspects. So, for example, oh, this guy does very good videos, or he's an expert in our industry, things like that. Measuring influencers, look at reach, look at engagement, SEO influence. So the backlinks might be very valuable even if the readership's not that high. There may be a change in share of voice for your company. There may be more brand mentions, and you may see an increase in leads or sales, especially when you're dealing with people like affiliates. Now there are channel partners, which are particularly important in B2B. You have online resellers. So for example, Insight and eBuyer in the IT industry. Value-added resellers, for example, companies that offer logistics, warehousing, stocking, credit checks, integration, and advice. And co-marketing with people that are value-added resellers may be more relationship-based. So things like events, launch events, and webinars rather than more transactional type of non-educational advertising. We also have distributors. So, for example, large warehousing facilities. We have managed service providers. We have consultants. We have systems integrators. We have people that collaborate on events and webinars. And an example of channel partnership program would be Lenovo's LEAP, Lenovo Expert Achievers Program. What happens here is participants earn points for completing educational modules and are incentivized to sell Lenovo server products. There were 8,000 participants, and participants in this partnership program sold 7 times more than non-participants. So a demonstration of how investment in channel partners could pay off. Now, one of the things when you're doing relationship type business-to-business marketing, like going after larger contracts, is there's more offline marketing. So face-to-face events, so technical product events are ideal for getting in front of a lot of people to articulate the value of your solution. You have magazines, brochures, on-site tradings, on-site demos, and I personally have seen a lot of case studies, and I've seen this myself with recently with a client of mine, the effectiveness of direct mail, especially going after kind of these bigger companies or companies that are harder to penetrate, this sort of situation. You want to create partner enablement programs. So just because you have somebody who's theoretically a partner doesn't mean that they're going to be successful. You need to enable them and you need to incentivize them. 49% of sales reps ignore half of marketing leads. So there's really a huge problem happening in business-to-business marketing where the leads marketing generates are terrible or the handoff to sales is terrible. There's just really poor alignment there. In fact, some research says that only 25% of leads may be worth passing to the sales team. So one answer is to align targets between sales and marketing if you want alignment. So making an agreement in terms of, okay, well, what counts as a qualified lead? What is sales pipeline? How do we define pipeline velocity? These types of things. Another common approach we see today is account-based marketing. So this is where you identify some key accounts, some key companies you want to go after. And it's a high touch process. So sales and marketing are both involved extensively for an extended period. You have personalized content for email nurture campaigns. You simultaneously target multiple decision makers. So the various users or deciders within the account. It's a long-term approach. Now, I've personally seen account-based marketing that is very quick in terms of generating sales pipeline. For example, email combined with direct mail. But the bigger the contracts get, I mean, it just cannot be short terms in some cases. So account-based marketing, it's also not just for customer acquisition, but it's also for expanding within an account. So upselling, cross-selling, etc. And with account-based marketing and sales work well together because you're agreeing on the target companies, accounts you're going after, who the decision makers are, etc. So there's naturally more alignment there. Plus sales is involved in earlier stages. Okay, so there are 3 types of account-based marketing. There's high penetration critical, which is basically one-to-one. Often in cases like this, you might even have like a dedicated account manager early on or a dedicated marketer too. Mid-tier is when you have one to few. So you might take 2 to 5 accounts, kind of group them together because they're similar, and then build your account-based marketing around them. And then lastly, we have group, which is one to many. This is more like traditional lead generation, demand generation. You can get data from companies like Experian, Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax. You can use social media. So, for example, you can go on LinkedIn and start answering pains from personas from companies directly through social media and get that engagement going from the early stages. Account-based marketing is not right if you want to market to a large audience. It's also not typically right if you sell a very simple product. It's easier to understand. You don't really need this extensive educational content. If your target customer is smaller, so like one-person businesses, and if there are fewer stakeholders, so for example, 1-2 decision makers. On the other hand, account-based marketing is a great fit if you have a complex product, more than 4 stakeholders, so like a CFO, a CEO, a director of IT, something like that, and more likely if you have large enterprise customers, a long sales process, and high lifetime value. Now, in the different stages, we have different types of content. So in the early stages, you might focus on blogs, infographics, and white papers. Late stages, video testimonials, case studies, how-to resources, and then portfolio expansion. You're going to promote case studies and video testimonials. How do you measure account-based marketing? Engagement rate, so looking at KPIs like click-through rate, reach within the account, pretty easy to track with something like LinkedIn, also email, return on investment, and pipeline velocity. One of the most important lessons here is you need to nurture your leads. You can't just generate leads and expect sales to come. It's the education, the nurturing, the middle of the funnel is absolutely critical. You can use live chat and interactive content to nurture and engage leads. I'm a huge fan of live chat. I've found it very successful at getting large contracts. Another trick is generally don't gate awareness content because you're just trying to get people into the funnel. You want more people reading it. Do not gate content from pay-per-click campaigns in general, according to the author of the book. What you might want to consider is gating consideration content or exclusive long-form content. And what I mean by gating here is people cannot access your content unless they fill out a form or provide an email. Now, there are different types of lead magnets. There are research reports, ebooks, videos, webinars, and the best ones are going to be those that solve a problem or promise something of value. And I just want to make a point here that the original purpose of lead magnets was forgotten over the years, but the original purpose was basically to identify a subset of people who are worth nurturing aggressively. So if they've filled out a form to get a white paper or PDF that is about a specific problem, then there's a high likelihood they're interested in solving that problem and a high likelihood they're going to eventually pay you for that. So that's why you would use something like a lead magnet. Now, some tips for landing pages. Generally, you remove the navigation. You talk about the benefits. You show evidence in the form of awards and recognition, and then you also show evidence from customers, so case studies, testimonials, etc. Now, let's talk a little more in detail about lead nurturing because it's so important. The length from lead capture to purchase is generally around 12 to 18 months. And I just want to get that wrapped around your head, how much nurturing is important and how long the sales process can be. People are going to engage with 5 pieces of content before they even engage with your sales team. So it's really about developing a relationship, not just a transaction or a click. You can use multiple channels for nurturing. It's not just email, but it's also social media, it's website, it's live chat, it's advertising, it's mobile, it's YouTube, it's events, and webinar. You want to provide content or information. And if you have a complex B2B solution, visual content's particularly effective. So things like videos, infographics, images, and webinars. So things like diagrams and videos can be embedded within emails. You want to use retargeting. Facebook's one of the best programs for doing that, but there are lots of programs that can do lead nurturing, Google, etc. Use lead scoring. So for example, if they attend an event, they might gain 5 points. If they haven't visited your website in a long time, they might lose 5 points. Or if you do have a lot of accounts, then AI is going to be more helpful. So something like Einstein with Salesforce. And you also want to have reasons to engage with the prospects. So an excuse might be some research that you found or product news, anything that's new, people like to pay attention to, a white paper or a new case study. You want to participate in third-party events where you're able to engage with multiple prospects at once. So, for example, vertical trade shows and conferences. You have BET for education industry in the UK, SPE for offshore event Europe, which would be for the oil and gas industry. The other thing to note is that even though somebody may have registered to attend an event, about half of them are going to drop off and not attend. So just factor that into your projections. And after the event, make sure you follow up within a few days to get maximum effectiveness. Now, how to measure reach and awareness. This can be a bit tricky because we're not just looking at leads. We're not just looking at pipeline or contracts that are won. So really what we're looking at here is share of voice, how visible your brand is and has that visibility increased. And the way we can measure that is looking at search engine optimization and social media. Are we getting more traffic? Are we ranking higher for certain keywords? Brand traffic over total traffic would be the SEO share of voice. And then we could look at brand mentions for our brand over the total number of brand mentions, including competitors, would be our social media share of voice. So SEO and social media provide us good measures of whether our reach and awareness is increasing. In other words, whether our brand awareness is increasing. Now, towards the bottom of the funnel, we can get closer to are we bringing in revenue or bringing more customers? And one of the key metrics in business to business is pipeline velocity. I have another video where I go into detail of how to calculate this, but here's the formula given in the book, which is pipeline velocity equals number of sales leads in pipeline times the average deal size times the overall win rate percentage over the current length of the sales cycle in days as a percentage of a 12-month period. Another trick to help with your analytics and tracking is to add UTM, which are basically these tags or keywords that you attach to URLs so you know where they're coming from. So for example, this came from a Facebook post or a Twitter post, etc. Use CallRail. So CallRail is software that I've used maybe 10 years ago. It basically enables you to track whether phone calls coming in are as a result of something like a Google ad, rather than just attributing phone calls to sort of this black box of we don't know where it came from. And lastly here, how to optimize your marketing budgets. It's a very interesting topic that I was published on recently. Review the cost of agencies and see who are the most expensive agencies, what are the fees that they're taking. Look at production cost of content. So I think this is something a lot of people ignore is they think, oh, well, blogs are cheap because we don't have to pay for advertising, but you have to, in one way or another, you're paying for either the time or the writer to produce that. So that's an important thing to take account of. For acquisition and brand building, it takes a lot of time to demonstrate return on investment. So both at the bottom of the funnel and the top of the funnel, you have to realize ROI is not immediate in B2B, not when you're looking at 12, 18 months to get a sale. Another key way to optimize marketing budgets is to reduce priorities and objectives. So basically focus. The more you focus, the more you might be efficient with your budget. So I'd say this is particularly important with startups where basically your imperative is to be as operationally efficient as possible, which means having a narrow product focus or a narrow geographic focus. Remove high-cost marketing tactics. So for example, video content is disproportionately expensive to produce. So cutting that would be an easy way to cut your budget. And the other thing is just to reduce the number of pieces of content, so the quantity. So for example, if you normally have 5 pieces of content for a given buyer stage, you can reduce that to 2 to reduce your costs.